So we don't have to tell you who she is. She's Angela Lansbury, and the same applies to a certain man of music who is one of the great men of music of our time and all time. His name is Bobby Rosengarden. And Bobby, you've met Angela, I'm sure, previously?
Yes, we worked together on the Cavett Show. We were just talking about it.
Dick Cavett Show?
Yes.
All right. Did you do dialogue at that time, or did you just...
Well, I wasn't supposed to, but I did.
Joined in, right?
He certainly did, yes.
You know Bobby from...
Yeah,
Yes.
we worked together several times.
down memory lane. I would like Jack Kleinsinger, who produces Bobby's concert and various concerts, to...
Highlights in jazz.
Highlights in jazz. How about you? You know, I'll rest today. You introduce Bobby Rosengarden, you introduce Angela Lansbury, then we'll just take over.
Thank you. That's really a pleasure. You know, Miss Lansbury, I almost forgive you for being mean to Judy Garland and the Harvey Girls,
Oh,
because I've
thank
enjoyed you on Broadway so many times. And Bobby Rosengarden is not only a great drummer, great musician, but Joe, I don't know whether you know this, he's one of the two musicians, along with Bucky Pizzarelli, who's responsible for my producing jazz concerts. I went to a wonderful, wonderful party in 1972 in Colorado and wound up rooming, with him. And
Don't misunderstand that.
he treated me...
We were in the same room.
Treated me miserably, because I was the only civilian surrounded by musicians, and I shined their shoes and made their beds, and I was really a good fellow, and much younger than they are, of course. But Bobby really felt that I should pursue my interest in jazz, and our concert series started 8 years ago. Bobby was our first drummer.
Jack puts on good concerts. I want to talk about the concerts and the causes and the life and times of all of our people. And Bobby, you being a good, able anchorman and left-hand man and right-hand man, we're going to chat with Miss Lansbury, and we're going to ask Jack to be my right-hand man, left-hand man, in-between man. Angela, have you thought yet about, we'll talk about a very important part of Miss Lansbury's life, abused women's aid in crisis, but just overall, have you thought yet about some of these books they're doing now, like Movie Star, Reveals All? Have you thought about an autobiography as yet?
Well, I did. I thought about it, and I quickly decided no, because I figured everybody else was better at the game than I was.
Right.
Or at least they had far more fascinating pasts than I had. So I kind of shelved the idea for the time being, but I'm going to wait a few years, and then I'm going to come out with my own little brand of autobiography.
And you are, of course, happily married at this point.
Yes, I'm happy to say that I am, and my husband is here, and we've been married for 31 years. How about that? And yeah, I want to round for that.
We don't have any studio audience. That's just our camera.
Yes.
So that's a nice reaction.
Yes, and we have a family, and we're very happy indeed. So, actually, I'd like to write a book about not my professional years so much, strangely enough, but I'd like to write about my childhood years that came up to the time that I started acting professionally. I think that might be a more interesting book.
Even before any kind of exposure on the stage?
Absolutely, yes. It would be it would really be devoted to how a kid grows up and becomes an actress, you know?
Could that have been in any part of London's East End or West End or thereabouts?
Both,
Really?
both. My life was touched by the East End, the extreme poverty, and so on of the East End of London, and by the high life of the theatre in the West End, which my mother was a part of. My father was a timber merchant. He came from the East End. My grandfather was a great labor leader and a great pacifist, and an MP and a Minister of Works in the cabinet and so on, but he was a champion of the poor. So I had this very interesting dichotomy of interest, really, in that side and in all of the glamour and the fun of the theatre. So that's really what my life has been about.
I've got
trying to balance those two
That's a good
elements.
balance. I've got a fuzzy recollection of Beatrice Lilly, who's now ill, but was sitting here. We did a panel of impressionists, and I think she mentioned at one time that her favorite impression of her was done by a very young by a baby Angela Lansbury. I could be wrong, but maybe
No, you're absolutely dead right.
What a memory I've got, huh?
Gosh, you do. I have to hand it to you, Joe.
I'm
That's
ready, I'm
fantastic.
ready.
I didn't even know she knew that
favorite
I'd
woman.
done it.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
very interesting.
Right, she said it.
Because, yeah,
She
the
was-
first sort of professional test that
That's right.
I had to do was to do an impersonation of her. I went to a marvelous party. That was the name of the, you probably know the number.
Yes.
And into it, I wove all these various characters, you see, with voices and freak voices and, everything under the sun. In fact, I remember I did an audition at Paramount, and the head of talent there said, "That girl is mad."
Based on that,
Based on that. Well, of course, you know.
a little more.
Wasn't
I was learning.
Gaslight your first movie?
Yes.
That was just on the other night.
Was
Here
it?
in New York. Yes.
Was it? Really? Gosh.
You were absolutely gorgeous.
Oh,
And
You are now,
and
but you're
is.
absolutely beautiful.
oh you
How many Tony Awards? 4 Tony Awards, I believe. 4 Tony Awards.
4, yes.
4 Tony Awards. I can't think of anybody in the world who won the Tony Award 4 times.
Well, I can. Julie Harris. I was just going to say.
Is that it?
Julie and I think, share that. In fact, she may even have 5, but I think we have 4.
Yours
yes.
were for MAME, for sure.
Yes. Mame, Dear World.
right.
Taste of Honey?
No, not for
should've.
that. No, Gypsy and Sweeney Todd. Yeah.
Right.
Sweeney Todd, incidentally, I'm not finished with. You know, I'm going to take it on a huge tour, and we're going to Washington next month, and to Philadelphia and Boston, Chicago, and then out to LA and San Francisco.
And it's
So,
nice of you to
10
do that
months.
because it's traveling and you're going to keep a lot of people working who normally wouldn't be that well employed if you didn't go on the road with them. It's a nice gesture that you do that.
Thank you. I
about
never
that
thought it that
set?
way. Well,
On the road.
we're not going to use that set, the one you're talking
They had
about from the
an iron
Eurus Theatre.
factory on the stage.
Yes. No, but we have something that approximates that. It's a very beautiful kind of, how shall we say, it's a simulated version of the Euroset. But it has all the superstructure and the, you know, the
When I remember
winches
when
and
going
everything.
to the theater, the stage with nobody on it.
Yeah.
It was striking
Yes,
immediately.
I think that people walked in and they felt quite dwarfed
Yeah.
by it all. Some people felt intimidated by it, so I don't think our new set is going to be quite as intimidating.
I am going down movie memory lane for about 30 seconds, courtesy of Marty Mannheimer, who's our movie collector, down movie memory lane. A couple of flash reactions of Angela Lansbury in The Amorous Adventures of Moll Flanders. Was that,
Oh, yes.
Was that fun?
It certainly was. I just got through making a movie with Kim Novak. Can you believe that? Kim, who's practically been in retirement for the last 10 years, I suppose. And I made a movie called The Mirror Cracked about Agatha Christie, and I play the old lady sleuth, Miss Marple.
Oh.
Yeah.
How's Kim?
She's great. She looks wonderful.
Still does.
Just beautiful.
She was on here in the old days with Bill Stern. A man named Bill Stern discovered her, the sportscaster.
Sportscaster, yeah.
That's
Yes,
nostalgia.
that's right.
From the golden days, you were a baby yourself, and
My goodness.
Angela Lansbury, George Murphy, and Phyllis Thaxter, and Margaret O'Brien in 10th Avenue Angel.
You've really been digging down the bottom of the trunk, Joe. That's marvelous. That's great. And George Murphy is now in Washington. Runs a newspaper there, I hear. He used to be Senator George Murphy, you know.
Angela, why do we meet a lot of people who come on? Mickey Rooney, of course, denied it all, but we meet a lot of people here who come on and say that a man like Louis Mayer, and since you were there,
Yes.
you know that he was mean. He drove people to.
Well, he was a bit of a tyrant, sure, but he was a star maker, you
Right,
know.
right.
And he had something. He had an extraordinary instinct for talent. He really didn't have it himself, but he knew how to gather around him the people who
He was
did.
an executive.
He was a perfect executive. He could delegate,
producer.
Yeah.
and he was a producer. That's what every producer should be able to do,
Right.
to select
Know who to hire.
who to do it,
Let's
who
hear
to
it
do
for
the job.
producers.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's hear it for the fact that the big moguls weren't necessarily tyrants, right?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously books have been written, and I personally had no bad experiences with LB. We used to play gin rummy together, in fact. He never even chased me around his desk.
Never
but-
once.
No, never once.
I'm glad we-
He was afraid of my mother, you
Really?
see. That was the thing. Yes, he really was. He was very fond of her, too. I think he chased her around the desk, but not me.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more movie recollection. How about from down memory lane? Till the Clouds Roll By.
Oh, yeah, how'd you like to spoon with me? That's right.
That was fun.
Got that one.
Do you have one leading man that's we could call your favorite out of all your leading men?
Oh, wow, I just had so many. It would be awful for me to just pick one and neglect the rest of them. I was never really a leading lady, you know.
Were you in the picture of Dorian Gray?
Yes.
That's an American classic. That is
Yes.
one of the all-time
Yes.
classics.
Herd Hatfield, I think, is one of my favorites
Has to be.
because he was
Gotta be.
Dorian Gray, of course,
Right.
and we were lovers in that, and it was a lovely movie, and I sang a song called Goodbye Little Yellow Bird.
I want Miss Lansbury in about a minute to invite a very special man named Marty Feldman to a very special event But I want to say first that when I sit here with Bobby Rosengarden, Bobby, first of all, let me hold this up. This is #1, and
No, wrong paper.
if you're in town, Angela, we'll cover his event as
Good.
well, okay?
Yes.
Got a lot of papers here. Let me hold up.
There it is.
Bobby, when were you exposed to a lot of music when you were a kid?
My mother was a pianist in the silent movie house.
Is that a fact?
So I grew up with music was in my house all the time.
So that music at the beginning of the
It's
program.
she used to play like that.
Absolutely
Oh, yeah, she
playing
used to
like
play
that,
like that.
yes.
And I can remember going to the theater, silent movies, when I was a little boy.
Right.
And I just assumed that everybody's mother played piano, you know, and I used to drum in the high chair. And it was a time of the Depression, and when the rich uncle, I think he had a job, bought me a snare drum, and I've never been the same.
And nobody ever had to beg you to practice?
Oh, God, no.
Never once.
Please stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
How
No,
do
I-
you practice? In a sort of soundproof
you know,
room?
no, there's a pad, a drum pad,
Oh,
and it's rubber, and it just keep the wrists loose. I
I
play
see.
all the time. I'm working all
Yes.
the time, which I prefer.
it's
You know,
better
both
to-
of his sons are musicians.
I have 2 sons that are
Really?
musicians. I have a younger.
And the one that just got married?
He's the drummer.
Yes.
Percussion player, and the younger one's a trumpet player.
Oh, fabulous.
They grew up with music, so they just went naturally into it.
Yes.
I like to. I think you feel the same way about what you do. I never had to go to work for a living. I've always done what I wanted to do.
Never had a job.
No, that's right. I never had to go to a job. I always played the drums, and people paid me to do it.
We're very lucky.
Except in
now.
this case.
Yeah,
where,
yeah, you know, I'm enjoying this because when you call Bobby to play, you know, it's, oh, I'm going to be working so hard, and it's so much effort, and yet I know you love it.
Oh, of course.
Jack Kleinsinger puts on good shows, and Mr. Kleinsinger
This is going to
invites
be a great one.
Next Thursday.
to
Next Thursday, Battle of the Bands. Bobby
Well,
Rosengarden and his orchestra.
The old guys and the young guys.
And no, you've got some great people in that
Yeah.
band. Jimmy Maxwell, Phil Bodner, Derek Smith,
Al
Jack
Fink.
Lesberg,
where and when, one more time?
and also the Widespread Depression
Right.
Orchestra, which is
At
Sandy
NYU.
young fellas. And we've got some friends of yours, some tap dancers, Honey Coles
Oh, what a show.
and Bubba Gaines. And
What a
it's
show.
all happening
It's at
Thursday
NYU.
night.
What a show.
At
At
Loeb
NYU.
Center.
NYU Loeb Center, which is 566 LaGuardia Place, just south of Washington Square Park.
Fabulous. Yes.
And it's this
It's a nice
Thursday
theater.
at 8
It's
o'clock.
a nice hall because it's not too big, and the acoustics are good. We don't have to amplify too much.
You're
Yes.
good. Everybody wants to create a new orchestra today, but they're hard to create. Everybody's talking
Bobby
about
is great.
about the big band craze, but there's the man who's way up there.
And you know, Joe, people don't realize it. They heard him on Dick Cavett,
Right.
and he would play, you know, between commercials and things
Right.
like that. People don't realize what a musician this man is,
Really?
my.
and what a good band he's got. No, I'm serious. I'm not just saying it
I
because
must
you're
say,
here.
the Cavett Band was the best set of electric trains a man ever had.
Mm.
That was such a wonderful orchestra, and we still do the themes on the Cavett show. I work for Home Box Office now.
This man works for everybody.
Yes.
Angela, it's a nice,
Yeah.
it's a nice, happy family.
Oh,
Right?
yes,
And you're
I
a happy
should
lady
say.
in general, right,
Wish you
Angela?
could come Thursday
Yes, I am.
What-
I'll,
what-
I'll be happier if I can do a little something
You're going to
about
make
my...
a
yeah.
big, big speech. Are you happy that...
No, I'm not gonna make a big, big
Are you
speech.
happy that Betty Hutton is back on Broadway?
Oh, I think it's lovely for her.
Did you know her in the...
I didn't, no. She was at Paramount and I was at MGM, and we never met, you know, in those days. We were all kept very much apart from one another. It was
When-
a most
when-
peculiar
when you
kind
read
LA's
of
a small town.
situation.
It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't have that much to do with each other.
I want to make a big...
yeah.
I want to make... You want to do a little one, I want to do a big
Yeah.
one about your cause and about Marty Feldman's movie
wonderful.
following this interview.
Great.
All right, I'm sitting here
Yes.
with Angela Lansbury, one of the most wonderful actresses of any time, with Bobby Rosengarden and with Jack Kleinsinger. And let's meet Marty and we'll serve
By
our
all
tea and
means.
crumpets. He is the comic genius,
He's
as
got
you
a
know,
great movie out.
of Marty. A lot of great movies out. We'll be right back with the new Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd and Laurel and Hardy, and his name is Marty Feldman. Stay with us. We are seated alongside Jack Kleinsinger, who produces such concerts as Bobby Rosengarden, and I'm seated alongside Angela Lansbury. Mr. Marty Feldman, this man, before I even say anything about Marty Feldman, what do you want to say about Angela or anybody here today, Marty? Anything at all?
Anybody? I mean, people in the audience. There was a man who propositioned me just now. What do you want me to say about that? No, I can't make it, but thank you for asking.
That's the new way of life, right?
I don't know, love. Talk about Angela Lansbury. I talked about an actress, but I also talked about a family. I have to talk about George Lansbury. It was very important to me. He was one of my political heroes. Still is.
Marty, you have never had a flop. I look at Marty Feldman.
Oh, come on.
I think of Young Frankenstein. I think of Silent Movie. I think of Sherlock Holmes' younger brother. Did you ever have any kind of a failure in your whole life? Ever, ever, ever?
Of course,
Really?
yes. I became an actor 13 years ago as a writer, which I'd been for many years.
Right.
They're having a retrospective on me, which is always alarming because it makes you feel awfully old. I've been writing for 25 years.
I'll guess what year you were born. I'll take a wild guess.
Please, go ahead.
1936.
34, you're wrong.
34. What
You
a...
owe me $500.
You were...
Tiny tots.
How about you, Jack? Were you born?
1936.
You were... Oh, so maybe I was guessing him by mistake.
Yeah, no, but it shows something. Bobby Rosengarden, it doesn't. There's another guy that I admired for a long while before I realized he was a guest on talk shows. I thought he was just a drummer. People ask drummers to talk.
I read about you in Penthouse or somewhere. You were once billed as the world's worst trumpet. Right. How'd you know?
World's worst trumpet.
No, I was. At the time, I was about 15. I was trying to be Miles Davis in black. But I was trying to do it by osmosis. I thought if I carried a trumpet around and thought about it a lot, I would become black and Miles. I didn't. I'm now learning to be drums by the same method. Can you do it, Bobby? Does it work that way? Do you
No.
become Sid Catlett? Do you become Dave Tuft? Do you become...
You just look that way, but it doesn't really happen.
No.
Marty, I
You
want
have
to
to go
tell
home practice.
Many times, Marty, I get balled out. I'm talking here
Practice
sometimes.
hard, I know.
I'm talking here with comedians sometimes, and I say, why is it in the old days there were thousands of comedians in the movies, and today I say there's only two, Woody Allen and Mel Brooks.
there's
And
not.
then somebody always writes me and says, you forgot to say Marty Feldman. I want you to know that.
Well, that's kind. So there is a Holy Trinity. That's marvellous, isn't it? No, but it's true. There were a lot of comedians around, but in the old days, we all used to be Blinky. We were the hero's best friend. Today, we get to play the leads. That's marvellous, as far as I'm concerned. In the old days, I'd have been Franklin Pangborn or something, you know.
Like the Stooge.
Yeah, I'd have been the guy who got, I don't know,
Joan Davis.
Eve Arden.
Eve
I'd have
Arden.
got Eve Arden, or she'd have got me. But when I was a kid, I used to go and see Danny Kaye movies. I fell in love, I fell totally in love with Dinah Shore. Because Danny Kaye got Virginia Mayo, his best friend got Dinah Shore. So I fell in love with Dinah Shore because I always felt that in life I'm one of the hero's best friends. In my own fantasies, I was never Bogart, I was always Peter Lorre, really. I'm glad you laughed. I didn't mean
No,
to
we don't
begin
have
this.
any left. We play only for the audience at home. I want to tell you that I want to talk about a movie which got a rave review in the press this morning, written by this man, directed by this man, starring Mr. Feldman, and it's called In God We Trust. But Marty,
Who
one
wrote
thing
the review?
in the Times this morning,
Really?
a rave.
I didn't know anybody had seen it.
All right,
God.
and we're going to name the
Got a
theaters.
review in the Post, too. I
In the
saw.
Post, too.
Name the critic,
Yes, I
for
saw the
God's
Times
sake,
review.
please.
I don't know, probably Mel Gusau or
I don't know. I
Frank
want him to
Rich.
have...
Vincent
I think it's
Campbell.
Vincent
Rich,
Campbell.
and he praised your
Frank Rich.
taste, as a matter of fact.
Marvellous.
Oh, I hate
Your good
that. I
taste.
don't want my taste to be praised.
Well,
Did he like the movie?
Oh, yes, did they laugh? I would hate to be accused of ghastly good taste. I mean, that could destroy you in the end, couldn't it? You know?
Marty, non sequitur, since I'm a fan of nostalgia, any early stint of yours, Angela was talking about when she was a baby before show business, any early stint in the life of Marty Feldman, anyone?
Okay, very earliest stint I remember, Marty Feldman's Bebop 7. Yeah, I'm sorry, that. Yeah. I used to carry gin around in my case because Big Spiderback did.
Really?
You know.
And look what happened to him.
Yeah, I know. It was before it was called Bebop, it was called Rebop in those days. It was 1951. And 51, I played a club called the 1951 Club. And somebody's mother got up and said, can my daughter sing? And that meant the whole front line got off the stand. You know, if somebody's daughter wants to sing, you all go out and get stoned. And you leave the rhythm section. And it was Lillian Clott, or who today is Georgia Brown, who got up and sang with my band at that time. And since then, we have become, she's my best friend and I'm hers, also my wife's best friend. But at that time, we'd never met, and though she sang with my band. It's very boring, but you did ask for earliest, not
Were you ever
funniest.
the... no, whatever you say is not boring to me. You know why?
Lovely story.
Beautiful. Were you ever the...
Lillian Clott.
No,
Her name was
Lillian Clott.
Clott,
Yes.
yes.
But we all went out and got stoned. You know, if somebody wants to come up and sing with a band, and
Right.
you, Bobby, you know, you're stuck.
Oh, boy.
As a drummer, you've got to go play behind.
I'm stuck. You're always there.
Pianist, bass player stuck. Tenor player, trumpet player, trombone player.
And let's
All
hope
go
that
out,
the piano
roll
player knows the
joint,
tunes.
Get out their skull. Don't have to work for 20 minutes. Let
I'll
them
be back in a
sing.
minute.
Yeah. And I miss Georgia, the very first time she ever sang professionally. It was in my band, but I wasn't there. I was outside getting stoned.
Mr. Feldman.
They still do that.
Marty,
Are you, Marty, are you at this moment, are you happy?
At this very moment? I mean, now.
I'm asking for a reason.
You know,
Let me ask you my
I
second.
was at the time you asked the question.
Let me ask you
but
my
by
second.
now,
Let me ask you my second question
everything
first.
is temporal. Life
Here's my
changes,
second
you're
question first.
transient.
Are most comedians depressed off stage?
Can I give you my first answer second?
Yes.
Okay. Well, most comedians are, like most people, life is fairly melancholy and death is the resolution. So most people are not very happy, really. You know, comedians are people.
Right.
Only more so. Because they expose their entrails, like Woody Allen does, you know?
Right.
That really is a good example of a man who opens up his insides and says, look, you know.
The guts.
Yeah.
Bob Hope is a different type, right? Bob
Bob
Hope.
Hope is a different type to anything. Good heavens. Except perhaps Reagan, you know, they belong together. And if there are cards for Reagan, if you can read the cards, he may win an election by people who vote by cards that say, vote for Reagan. They will read the cards and say, we will vote for Reagan. Yeah, are you talking about comics or are you talking about people who read cards?
Jack Benny used to
Benny,
be sad.
Benny was marvellous.
Right.
Benny had a sense of his body.
Right. He was
in a way-
graceful.
Yes, people think of Benny in mid-shot, but Benny, when you saw him, could you go wide for a second, please? I can't do Jack Benny, but Jack Benny was this, it was that. The feet were like that, the hands were like this. He made a beautiful shape. Benny was, did you go wide in time?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You got the best.
No, what I think I really am trying to say is that comics really work with their whole bodies.
Red Skelton, too.
Skelton, of course. George Burns still, who will not go gentle into that good night, except he will shuffle off into that good night.
He's graceful, too.
Graceful, yes, there's a grace, but Buster Keaton is my particular hero. But
I want to talk about your heroes, and Angela, I gotta.
Well,
if I
her
don't
father was
ask you
Martin,
one
don't you?
question first, before we talk about this, we'll lose a lot of fans. I've got any memory of Elvis Presley movies, just one of you with Elvis Presley, because all our people are Elvis fans. Any Elvis highlight?
Oh, my goodness. I spent a very happy 3 weeks with Elvis in Hawaii,
Right,
with Blue Hawaii.
right.
I spent,
And,
You spent?
please.
yeah, I spent, yes.
Please go ahead, Dan.
No, darling, please.
No, I about be frivolous and stupid in order to get a cheap laugh, which isn't worth it. So please go ahead.
Oh, all right, no cheap out. What can I tell you?
taste. The times was right.
Yes. Well, all I can tell you is that he was, in those days, this was before, I think he ran into some emotional problems and possibly leant a little too heavily on the bathroom cabinet, shall we say. He was a lovely, charming, courtly young man. Can you believe it? I mean, he really was. He had the most lovely kind of southern manners. And he was very sensitive and extremely sweet and nice. He had all these friends, the cousins who traveled and were around with him all the time. But he was a very thoughtful person on the set, and I mean, he never kept anybody waiting, and he knew his lines, and he did his best, and he was very, very good and very nice. And I always got a Mother's Day card from him every year afterwards, and a birthday card.
What about that, Marty? Nice?
How about that?
I never got a Mother's Day card from him. But
It started as a little joke, and then I think, I don't know, it always continued.
Yeah.
there was, again, a man with a sense of his body. He was very graceful.
Oh, certainly, my goodness. What a body.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Mr.
I beg your
Feldman,
pardon.
Mr. Rosengarden,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinsinger, many of our fans have said we've got to devote some time to abused women's aid in crisis. And if you want to know about a lady who gets involved with a good cause, who's a good lady, Angela Lansbury is that person. Angela?
Well, I must preface my invitation to you all by saying that my own involvement with the question of domestic violence really has been brewing in my mind for a number of years. And strangely enough, Marty, I first became aware of domestic violence and what a very big problem it is in our society was in England. When I was in London a few years ago, there was a woman called Elaine Pitsey.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
she started a house in Richmond, and single-handedly she gave shelter and aid to women who had nowhere to go, who were battered wives. I was so impressed by her, I remember I sent a check, something you don't often, I really got out my checkbook and I wrote the check and I sent it off. I thought, this woman needs help. Well, when I came to New York a couple of years ago, I heard about this organization in New York, which is called AWAKE. And this is an acronym for Abused Women's Aid in Crisis. Now, they are an agency, an institution in the city that are devoted to the problems of domestic violence. And they have so many services. They have a hotline. If you're in trouble, you need help, you can call that number and you will have a willing ear and a lot of very good advice. So this benefit that they are having on the 6th of October is enormously important, because it's the first time that the public are going to be able to participate and support, really, this tremendous cause. And the reason I also feel so strongly about it is because it is the children who are really the ones who suffer so terribly, bless their hearts. They're caught in the crossfire of domestic violence. They are on the receiving end of battery and violence themselves, which is just too dreadful to even think about. Nevertheless, they are, and it's one of those questions in our society that has to come out in the open now, just as alcoholism has. And alcoholism and domestic violence, of course, go hand in hand. However, I want to tell you about the event. We're going to have this dinner. It's going to be held at Ted Hook's on stage on 46th Street on Monday night, October the 6th. The tickets are $150 each. I have to tell you that. But, of course, if you can't come to the benefit, any kind of contributions that can come to Awake will be greatly appreciated. The number to call if you're interested in attending the benefit, and incidentally, the entertainment is going to be Sylvia Sims, who's going to sing, which is wonderful, a great, great artist and a wonderful singer. We're going to have music and a great meal. The number to call is 888-0661, and Miss Marsha Wagner will be happy to take your reservation. Now, obviously,
And
you
Rex-
are one of the dinner committee.
I'll be on the committee,
Joe,
and Rex
dear one,
Reed called up to say
and,
that he'd be there, and it's going to be a good...
Yes, oh, we have some wonderful people on the dinner committee. They're just,
Angela,
yeah.
I totally agree with your aims. Do you not think that that's rather specific? Don't you think that, forgive me.
Please, are you kidding? This is your day.
Initially, that one has to get the ERA ratified, rather before we get as specific as this. Having got that,
Absolutely.
we can move on from there, you know?
Well, I
It's going to happen. It's just a matter of how soon can it happen.
Well, it really is a matter of how long women are treated as second-class citizens. When they have an equal voice, these issues that Angela raises, which are very valid, will come as a matter of course.
yes, but what has the ERA got to do with men who are battered by their wives?
It has a lot to do with women who are battered by their husbands.
Yes, but I'm
Oh,
talking about domestic violence as a whole.
Yes.
It isn't only the women who are battered
terrible
by
thing
their
about that.
husbands.
No, I'm really talking about the woman's voice, women's voices being heard equally. Which is, I think,
Mr. Rosengarden.
fundamentalist.
Even more importantly, I think this domestic violence is self-perpetuating. Usually a child who grows up as a battered child grows up to be a battering
Yes.
a battering parent. Can't help it. I mean, it's instilled in them at an early age, because usually they're very tiny infants, and it self-perpetuates.
Well, whatever
itself.
you want to know about the big affair at Ted Hook's on stage, which will feature Miss Lansbury and a lot of great stars for a good cause. The name of the organization is Abused Women's Aid in Crisis, and one good number for all of the information might be 686, right, Angela?
No, 888
888.
0661.
Give it one more time.
888 0661.
888-0661.
Right.
Bobby?
I'd like to mention something, if I may.
Please.
In addition to the concert this coming, the 2nd of October. Is it the 2nd?
The second.
The 2nd, Thursday night. At NYU at Loeb Center. I'm involved with an organization on Long Island. It's really a jazz association. It's called the International Art of Jazz. And it encompasses all of the New York area. And we're having a jazz gala. Marty, you'd be interested in this if you're in town. November 14th weekend,
I would indeed.
out in Montauk, Long Island, in Gurney's Inn. It's a marvelous resort.
Bobby, can I ask you, are you featuring only the contemporary jazz musicians?
Oh, no, all kinds of players.
Or is Roy Eldridge working?
Now, let me tell you, now, Roy's going to be there, Clark
Joe
Terry.
Jones?
Joe's not feeling well.
Okay.
Joe's not well.
Joe
but,
who? Joe who?
Joe Jones.
No,
Oh, he's a
no,
great
no,
man.
because we tend to sort of
Oh, no,
divide
all kinds of
jazz
early
into
Doc Cheatham,
periods,
as I said, Milt Hinton, Dick Hyman.
Bobby, you know, a lot of great songwriters. I remember Johnny Mercer was here. He was complaining before he died that nobody was buying his stuff nowadays. A lot of great songwriters are now
Sammy Kahn complains about that now.
complaining that the music scene has passed them by. With all their millions, They're still unhappy
Well,
that people don't...
But fortunately in jazz is more popular now. It's the one art form that's native to America.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it in Europe, we're very big stars. All jazz players are very well known. And it's getting to be better here, I'm saying. But this weekend is very important for the New York area. We're using Ruby Braff. There's so many people
Will he play a
involved.
new solo?
Beg pardon?
I've heard Ruby Braff many times.
Oh, he's marvelous.
Play the same solo. It's brilliant, but he always plays the
Oh,
same
no.
one.
No, I don't think so.
Marty, you are brilliant. Marty, what's your big ambition? What's your big ambition as of now, Marty?
Oh, as of now,
After In God We Trust.
I have no idea, love.
No idea.
I live in a series of nows that change.
Right.
Ever-changing nows.
I've got
So,
friends of mine who've seen you on TV series where you did sadness, pathos. So this man can do comedy and pathos. And
Oh, yeah, I always suspect the phrase pathos. It sounds like you're pleading for someone to like you. I don't want to be lovable.
are you a fan of Benny Hill?
No, I wrote for him.
I know that.
I'm
I am.
You are, Angela?
Oh, I'm on the floor. Yes.
Really?
I'm a fan of Buster Keaton's,
Right.
Harper Marx, of Stan Laurel's.
You would have enjoyed
Van
being
Dyke's,
in
of
silent
Woody
movies. You
Allen's.
would have been great in pre-talkie movies because you got the face for silent films. You would have been...
Well, I do love physical comedy. I think action is unambiguous.
you were born
Oh.
8 years after silent movies died, but you would have been
There's
great.
a Laurel
Oh, that
Hardy
may be
film
coming
on
back.
tomorrow afternoon. I think it's on Channel 9.
Probably.
I'm not sure. I think so.
You think silent movies
Middle
might
of the
come
afternoon. They're doing Blockheads.
I don't think they ever went away. You
Never
know.
left.
No.
That's
Yes.
Yes.
I think kids,
know the
old
war
people, everybody, all over the world love physical comedy
hit on the head with a
because
shower.
a slapstick is...
Marty, when you're in town, we do an hour together. I just want to tell you that this man's movie is called In God We Trust, and he is a creative man. I'll bet when you're on the movie set, it's not just precise and scientific and precision. I'll bet it's kind of frenetic or thunder and lightning and spontaneous that you, even though the script might be written, that you could, you would change it a little bit as you go along if you get an idea on the moment, on the spur, right, Marty?
You lost a bet.
It's really tight. It's really tight.
No, but you concentrate so hard on doing it. I
Right.
mean, it's like doing fast. Am I right? However much fun it is in rehearsals, when you come to do it, you're concentrating so hard on doing it. But it is like sex. It's not much fun while you're doing it. It's great fun after you've done
Think
it.
about it, right?
And you discuss it, and you see the...
Oh, I don't know.
He sounds like Georgie Jessel now, right? Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know more about any of the Women in Crisis events and the big benefit which happens on...
The concert's on October 2nd and the big jazz gala.
Talk about Angela's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Angela's event is on...
Mine is on October the 6th on Monday night.
Right. And
At
it's a
Ted
good
Hook's
cause.
on stage.
Good cause, good show.
Oh, indeed
Bobby
it is.
Rosengarden, when I'm with
Widespread
you...
Depression, Thursday, October 2nd.
And the jazz gala November 14th.
When I'm with you, it's a real garden. And Marty Feldman, when you're in town, who's that on your... Oh, that's Buster Keaton.
I have my own Holy Trinity. It's...
All right, you ready for this? You ready for this?
Can you get on
Somebody,
Buster?
this lady brought me one of my books, and out of all, I've had 67,000 guests on TV, and I have only one
Oh, let me look.
only one picture in the book of and that is yours truly with Buster Keaton, who was a very dear friend of mine. He was on the show at least 25 times in the 50s and 60s.
Well, that was fairly... Well, it was late for you,
sure, I started-
obviously, because you look middle-aged. You look so young, so it must have been late.
I started in TV in 53, so this had to be 54, 55, 56, up until
This
1960.
was the period in which he was not recognized,
No.
right?
Was on the
I had him on once with Donald O'Connor when they made the movie together.
Well,
He was
that
around
was very
all the
sad,
time.
I think,
He was always
because
Sad,
it was
sad.
his life,
I know.
but it wasn't truly his life.
That's true.
And Don O'Connor, great though he is, was not Buster
It was fictitious.
Yes.
These words, as we say, in God we trust, Angela Lansbury, Bobby Rosengarden, and Jack Kleinsinger are coming up some very delightful people. Marty, we just love you. Don't ever stop making movies.
As long as I pay him, yeah.
All right. And I'll be in the audience.